latest info on what's happening at GreyNoise, Censys, and VulnCheck, take a look at a roundup of important and timely cybersecurity topics, toss out some expert opinions, and drop the occasional conspiracy. Much has happened while we were all on holiday, and a much deserved and I think well taken holiday by all of us. First, we review of which of 4 recent major cybersecurity incidents are causing the most consternation by y'all as we begin a tumultuous new cyber year. Then we go above and beyond trust to assess the damage caused by one of our most insidious nation-state adversaries and show the current scope of public exposure to the API leak thanks to our friends at Censys. Next, the crew asks the question, so exactly how do you know you eradicated Salt Typhoon? Rhetorically, of course, to the rogues gallery of telcos who fell victim as part of this Salt Typhoon campaign, and discuss the implications of that and the broader mission of Salt Typhoon. And of course, we check in on all the latest happenings of each of our respective benefactors, and if time permitting, take a peek at Sissa Kev. So I first want to say to everybody, Happy New Year, since I think I may not have said that when we had our pre-show. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, 2025. Here we are.
Is that bar set a little high? Like, is happy really achievable, or is it like content New Year, or like just New Year? Like, what is it for you guys?
Have a new year.
Have a new year.
It's a new one.
So I'm gonna start with Overwatch first because I don't want to forget. We don't have a long-winded question today, but Ashley, how was your holidays and how is the New Year going for you so far? While she's typing, I will talk a little bit. I could hum a tune if you want. It's okay. I wish she wasn't ready. Everything's awesome. Wow. Okay. Wow, that's quite the opposite of have a new year. So maybe we need to balance that out with going to Emily. Emily, how you doing this morning?
Hi, I'm great.
So did you have a good holiday? Did you de-screen? Did you run? What did you do while you were away?
I did all of those things. I unplugged my laptop, like I think the Friday before Christmas, and sat it on my shelf and did not consume any news or security news or anything for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
So yeah, there were a few points where people were like, "Hey, did you hear about the Treasury?" And I was like, "Nope, I don't. Spoilers. I'm saving it." And so Monday was a fun day for me.
Wow. Cool. That's great that you got to completely decouple from, I guess, reality, although I'm not sure this news thing is reality anymore, but that's
it was
thing.
nice. I think it was good. I would highly encourage everyone to do that at some point during the year.
Hemija, how are you doing this morning?
Amazing.
I'm not tracking the snow much because Maine didn't get any, but I'm assuming New York did get some snow.
We got some last night, yeah, and all of yesterday.
How does the city handle that? Because I've never actually been in New York when there's been snow.
We handle snow the way we handle anything, which is pretend it's completely normal.
Fair. That's fair. Did you manage to decouple during the break? Did you manage to get some time away from screens and more time with family?
I did not. I was extremely plugged in, but also plugged into my family. So just a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
It'd be great if we all could have rested, but I guess that is not a thing. So I do know, Glenn, good morning. And are you, I think I asked you already before, but just you've been under the weather. Are you over the weather yet?
I'm getting through the weather.
Okay.
Not over or nor under. No prepositional.
And I know for a fact you did try to decouple yourself from things over the break. Did you succeed?
For my normal level of fire hose newsfeed, I would say I succeeded. It was a slow trickle. So for me, that's probably as good as it's going to get. And it was very nice. But I do think I think that I could only pull that off those 2 weeks a year, basically.
Okay.
Like, because so many other people do the same. So, because I did check in a couple times and there was so little to catch up on it at points. I was like, okay, good. Everyone else is chill too. Until what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I was going to say like that may have been a thing, but a lot happened while we were all goofing off.
It wasn't reported on until near the end.
Yeah, this is true. I managed to go see my grandsons and I guess my daughter and son-in-law. Well, I mean, they're not really that important anymore. Well, they're not that important anymore. Those little ones.
R.I.P. Tori.
Yeah, sorry, Tori. They do unfortunately listen, which is one reason why we keep this to be a G-rated show. We got back and I cooked a lot. We got a lot of fun. It was I did not decouple as much from news as I would have liked either. So
I feel like you did the opposite because you kind of basically built yourself a personal app from the news. So I feel like you did the opposite.
a little bit, yeah, a little bit. There's stuff going on that we need to know. Although I am trying to unplug from the insane news and just kind of try to focus on like the broader news. The insane news being like anything U.S. politics related. So I am doing pretty well with that actually. So. Wait a minute. Wait, so we have. I was hoping that the Peanut Gallery would talk about this, and one of our regulars, Sam, managed to go to a cabin. I'm assuming in the woods or the mountains, and had very limited internet. That's my life. I want that cave. No electronics, nothing. Just go away. Be away from humanity. That would be really nice. And we're starting off at a little bit of we're behind. I'm behind. Because I just had to reboot and go to a different computer and do everything. So we're going to kick this off and we're going to share. So I'm a little slow on the draw, everybody. We have someone who wants to live in a Faraday cage too. That would be pretty fun. We need to share. Present. I can do this. I totally can do this.
You got
believe
this.
in you.
There we go. Oh, no, we don't.
New year, new us.
So we have a podcast, and I'm going to zoom in on this one. The Overwatch, who is behind the scenes right now, would love it if you were to go down to this box here and subscribe, so we can keep in contact with you. That is something that we actually do like to do. And we are going to start off with, y'all were great. Like, I cannot believe how, even in the limited time that we had to post this poll, Jordan did a phenomenal job getting it together on all three platforms. And the polls are going great because y'all have great feedback, y'all have great ideas and everything. And we asked you all, because it was a pretty big news end of the year. Maybe some of the things occurred earlier in the year, and as Glenn noted, they talked about it at the end of the year, but all these things kind of just burst out like at the end of the year or very recently. We asked y'all which recent major incidents concern you the most. And I am not really surprised by these results. I want to get everyone's reaction in a second, but 46% of you said Volt Typhoon and the US telcos situation. The Chrome extensions breach, which I'm going to actually ask Glenn a little bit about because I think he knows the most of it out of all of us. It was the thing that he brought up yesterday. The BeyondTrust enabled hacks, which that's going to be, I think that's going to be the gift that keeps on giving in 2025. And the China hacks OFAC, which I'm a little shocked that is all the way at the bottom, but perhaps I should not be all that shocked by that. So I guess, what were your reactions to the poll being in that, just 40, like almost half care deeply about Volt Typhoon and the Telco hack?
I think it tracks with what I assumed would have happened, what the results would be. It's, as we're going to talk about here in a minute, like, it's something that's highly topical and highly it's a big concern being talked about a lot, but since there's not a lot of hard knowns, that it just kind of gives a mystery around it too. So I think that's kind of helping its news cycle life be extended, because people are kind of clamoring for some information around it.
Yeah, totally. I think that the less hard facts we know about something, the more maybe nebulous and scary it seems. I was interested to see that the Chrome extension one was second, because I feel like that's a very known thing to be able to respond to. But yeah, I also remember seeing a comment by somebody saying like, "Oh, this should be standard practice, so that's why this doesn't worry me as much." I'm paraphrasing, but I'm wondering what concerns people there.
I think the fact that like Volt Typhoon and the telco stuff is top. Like, yeah, I'm not shocked. I'm also weirdly like not shocked that the Chrome extension stuff is also kind of up there, because both of these stories, both of these kind of incidents kind of have far-reaching like consumer, what does it mean for me as an individual implications, I think. as well as like if you're an administrator trying to deal with like Chrome extensions in your environment or something like that. Like I can see where there's maybe more legs to both of these. Although I will say I am kind of surprised about the OFAC thing not being a little bit more like, I think it's maybe more nebulous in some sense. But yeah, I was a little surprised because that to me is an interesting one for sure.
I think it was probably just less reported on so far.
I mean, is it really not? Because like there was a lot of like if you were to go like just because I Googled a lot to try to figure out what's going on with those, like the chunk of the Chrome thing, right? That's what you're talking about.
Oh, they're talking about the OFAC.
Oh, the OFAC. I'm sorry. Yes, OFAC. Okay, that one. That made it to real news though. So why people wouldn't be concerned about it when it made it to real news as
Because
opposed
what
to
does it
cyber
mean for
news?
me as an individual? Like with the telcos, it's like, okay, I've even got the FBI telling me not to use SMS with Chrome extensions while I run Chrome. So I have a thing there. So like the OFAC thing maybe feels kind of disconnected and not as like, what does it
It's
mean for
government's
me?
problem. It's
Right.
it's OFAC. Like someone else will take care
That's
of
my
it.
guess. I don't know.
Well, okay, so maybe since it's been obvious as a result of November 6th that the American populace doesn't actually care about government, that maybe that's why it's sort of not there. I don't know.
We're too focused on saving TikTok right now, Bob.
We are. We desperately are on that one. Glenn, could you? So since we're not going to go in depth on it, and everyone might have bypassed the Chrome thing, could you just briefly just blather about what the Chrome thing was so people are aware?
Yeah, there was late in December. Essentially, it was it's from what I understand, a phishing campaign that targeted a lot of Chrome developers. Like click here, you're going to be removed, or something like that. And apparently, a lot of developers clicked the thing, gave over their permissions or their authentication, and then it, for lack of a better, like it basically became a supply chain attack. And the Chrome extensions were poisoned. Is that a way to word it? So basically, like the impact of this was pretty huge. It looks like up to 36 or at least 36 extensions. Total combined usage of those were like almost just under 3 million users. And I don't think that anyone in our field would be surprised by this at all. I think we kind of mentioned that just a few minutes ago. But I'm not sure if I can recall, and I didn't actually look into this thought, but a Chrome extension breach. Like we hear ones and twos here and there. I don't recall one, hitting almost 3 million people all at once. Of course, doing that at holiday peak season probably is pretty juicy for the attackers to be able to slurp a bunch of passwords and whatever else, because the Chrome extension is running in your browser. You just click the thing and it gets the full web page. So like it can, depending on the permissions, of course, but it can do and save and copy everything that you're typing into the page. So it's a very lucrative incident. And so we started hearing about this late December. Cyberhaven was the first to break out the news about it, and that was right after Christmas on the 27th. And they alone had 400,000 users using their plugins. So Chrome extensions are great. Like I use them; they're fun and they can really help your workflow out. But this does revive the argument that we have kind of talked about here and there around like the dangers of Chrome, the dangers of extensions, because it's basically installing third-party software. Chrome does keep their stuff, up to date very quickly. There's an update every 2 minutes, it seems, but extensions not so much. And the extensions live in a very unregulated, unobserved, like people aren't paying attention to them. Yeah, so. Not surprising, but perhaps this can put some pressure on organizations to either block or put some controls around what extensions are allowed in your organization, because this is pretty impactful. I'm not answering this comment.
Yeah. So we actually have a very sneaky comment. Yeah, which is great. Like, what Chrome extensions do you use, Glenn? and Sam has a good point, which is, that an org, if you have a controlled endpoint, a desktop, whatever, you can do policies even on Macs to a degree, and even on Linux to a degree, to limit what folks can actually do, even blocking them. Like I've been in an org where we tried to do an allow list for Chrome extensions, and that lasted all of a week. I don't know how that goes anymore, because it's just impossible to accommodate everybody and make requests and help desk, whatever. But beyond that, one question I also want to ask you. I was like, how many different instances of Chrome, like of a Chromium browser, do you have on your endpoints? And you don't need to tell me which ones. I don't want to give anybody like more ammo to throw at us. But like, do you run more than just Google? Okay, do you run Google Chrome? I guess is a thing. Do you guys run Chrome or some version of Chrome?
Yeah, I've got at least 3.
Some version of Chromium.
Yeah, exactly. 3 Chromiums going.
Yeah, so like that's the thing.
That I know of, actually. They're
yeah, that's true too. But that's the thing. Like I must have 7 different Chromium-based browsers on any endpoint at any given time.
Of course.
Which one of those are you going to block the extension on?
Yeah, because that's true. Yeah, that's valid, right? Like Chrome, the more niche you get, the less org controls policy. I'm missing the word. My brain's not working yet, but organizational controls that you have over setting those policies on those desktops. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say, I want to give a shout out to Frank at the new year. Frank is in charge of all of us IT-wise at GreyNoise, amongst a whole ton of things that Frank does. Frank is really good at finding every version of Chromium that I run and making sure that whatever he had needed to control on that Chromium is controlled in that Chromium. So good on you, Frank, for that. And maybe I should call up Frank and like get some consulting hours going if you want to know how to do that on your own org. But it's pretty there. I just want to I don't want to hang on this whole longer. But Lou asked a great question. Do you count each different Electron app too? And I don't, from the Chromium like use browser thingy like perspective, because it's not like you can't really do much to it on there. But the Electron apps in general are just horrible, terrible beasts that unfortunately run it everywhere. I can't stand
it. I do want to just like reiterate that like this issue was through phishing, right? Like all roads, 99% of the roads lead back to phishing, and that's where this led. That's the source of this one. So not necessarily dogging on, now maybe Chrome could put some controls in place, but not necessarily like this isn't the issue here isn't a Chrome issue. It's a phishing issue that it's targeted a lot of developers.
Yeah. So again, we should move on, but I want to talk about this for a second. So it isn't just, but I agree with that. This was phishing, and phishing is a thing to get access to developer stuff. But I mean, a lot of the news hype cycle that goes out through the year, because throughout the year, the past few years, there have been ecosystem breaches like PyPy and NPM and whatever. You've got malicious packages getting in there. They are to get actually on endpoint. Sure, like they want to have that malicious code be running at everyone's endpoint that's going to use the app that was built with that thing. But in a lot of cases, they're doing the NPM stuff and the PyPy stuff to get access to the developer's machine to then be able to do this in case like this and other apps that the developers do too. So when orgs see that there is like a PyPy breach or an NPM breach, or pick your different, like source and package repo out there, that's something where like you probably should care about your developers or your tinkerers in your own organization, because they might be impacted by that and you wouldn't even know. Because you're not looking at it from that perspective. So that probably is another way that we're going to see throughout, because this is going to be a great vector in 2025 and beyond too. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
I mean, if all the apps run in the cloud, then the browser is the best place to get in there.
Unfortunately, we should all just go back to running apps locally again. No, I don't know if that's
mainframe.
You know what? Say what you will, that green screen works pretty well. I'm not gonna lie. We are going. So speaking of going beyond trust, browsers wise, anyway. It's too easy to do that. I'm sorry. We're talking about this one first, and we're gonna slide it into the discussion about the telcos, because they're kind of sort of related with like the fact that we have a very large nation state entity that seems to want to destroy all the things that we possibly, or infiltrate all the things we possibly have. If you haven't heard about this BeyondTrust issue, you did a better job decoupling from the internet than the rest of us did. So just really quickly in this one, just in case you did, back on the 12th, there was an incident forensics going beyond for something that happened at BeyondTrust. A limited number of remote support software as a service customers on December 5th. They basically identified that an API key had been compromised, and that there are a number of folks out there that were impacted by this. And we're going to talk about one in particular right now. I have to say, like, I think BeyondTrust did a pretty good job communicating the incident. Like, and I want to get Glenn's opinion on this one, since he is the biggest critic of people when they do incident response and incident response comms. What's your take on how well BeyondTrust managed to maintain trust with everybody?
I wasn't prepared to answer that question, so I was tuned out enough to not do play-by-play of this incident. So I actually can't answer that. Sorry, Bob, but I mean, I'm already appreciating a clear timeline that you're showing on the screen, and that's more than we've seen by many. So I'm going to assume that it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, and just before you that, like, Todd, thank you, Todd, for jumping in. I didn't say what BeyondTrust was. That's my bad. We should be better at doing that. I should be better at doing that. This is something they basically provide, like, remote access, the identity access management. They're a pretty large player in this space. They're used by a ton of the Fortune 100, and they have thousands and thousands of customers. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Like, what would you compare it with? Like, what big name that people know? Like
Okta, maybe.
Okay.
If people know Okta, I would think by now people should know Okta.
People know now.
Yeah.
So now we know BeyondTrust. So maybe this is marketing.
Sorry. Oh, we are not revisiting that discussion from December. We're not doing that. All right, go for it, Images. Sorry to interrupt you.
I was gonna help Glenn out with some dates. So basically, the initial intrusion was on the 2nd of December, and then within 3 days, by the 5th, they had notified customers, allegedly.
Okay.
And the Treasury was notified on the 8th. So not too bad, I would say. And the fact that they immediately revoked the key and notify customers, suspended the affected instances, I think that they did the right things in this case.
And you say they notified the Treasury because the Treasury was a customer, not because of a regulation compliance reason?
That I don't know. I think they notified the Treasury because they were the Treasury was hacked, which we will get to. Spoiler alert.
And what I was gonna, I had this all ready to go, and I have to do it now quickly. You guys, Censys, had a phenomenal rapid response for this one. Let me share that one as well for everybody.
Yeah, I know that there's someone at Censys that did not decouple from the news because their rapid responses were just rapid.
Well, I mean, so to
rapid
be fair,
and
right?
rapid.
So did either one of you have to do this rapid response, or did someone else at Censys do this rapid response?
Our wonderful analyst Jackson spearheaded this.
Jackson.
Yes.
So I could read this, but you all probably have it off the top of your heads, or can be way more articulate than I am. So Emily or Hemant, do you want to talk about what you did, why you did it, and what the extent of the damage is?
Yeah, so the TLDR is that we observed, we basically tried to fingerprint all of the exposures of BeyondTrust instances that we found. And in this case, there were 2 products. It was their remote support software as a service instance, and also these privileged remote access instances. Don't ask me to explain the difference between them, but we found both on the internet, and we found over 13.5 thousand of those exposed. Not all of these are vulnerable because we can't find versions short of logging into those instances. But something that's not covered in here is that we've started to actually kind of look more closely at the data, and we found something between 300 and 400 very obviously government affiliated hosts running these things. So that's kind of concerning to me. Although CISA came out this morning and said that no other federal agencies were apparently breached, but that's all of these headlines need to be appended with yet, really, right? But yeah, I would say I would call this a major incident. I expect to see more headlines related to it, just given the number, just how popular it is. Um, but that's not to cause panic. That's just to say we have a query in there that you can use to find any. It's very easily detectable software is the nice thing.
How unusual is it for? Because I mean, I actually I'll preface this with, so if for folks that don't measure the internet like our two organizations do in different ways, the internet's really hard to measure, and any given day there could be major routes gone, there could be cables cut in seas overseas, all sorts of things like that. So measuring it is, you're not going to get the exact same number, at least usually not, at least every time that you do a scan. But this is a pretty huge jump between the January 2nd and 6th, from like 8,600 instances to like almost 14,000. Like how unusual is that of a bump for services like this that you've seen before? Or if you don't know, that's great too, because we weren't prepped to hear that. But it's just a huge, to me, like having scanned the internet for a living before. That's just seems like a giant jump between those two things.
Yeah, so that's on us. That's because we modified our fingerprint between those two dates. So that is us. That is not necessarily internet. It could be a blend of both. But yeah, these don't look like honeypots, so that's not uh probably the main reason if there was an increase. Um, but yeah, they're out there.
I mean, I think we
Period.
stood up like 3,000 of them, right? No, I'm just kidding. We didn't do it.
And this was from an API key, right? I believe, like a
Yep.
SaaS API key was leaked
Yes.
or
Yep.
found. So that's kind of a bummer. Like, I look at this as kind of, as we're talking and reading up, like they clearly had a incident response plan, communication plan. That's awesome. Love to see that. So, you know, it kind of bodes well for the company in that aspect. Like, hey, yeah, they're on it, they're prepped for it. And then to see that it was a leaked key is kind of like, oh, like that's a silly thing. We see it a lot, but
Have details emerged about how the key was leaked? I am very behind on this story.
No.
all I'm finding is attackers gained access to the remote support SaaS API key, allowing them
That's
to reset
interesting.
passwords.
I'll be really curious if we ever get details about that.
So yeah, maybe it was phishing. I'm just kidding. But you know, that's kind of a bummer. So maybe this is a me thing. I kind of, when I see these big incidents like this, it's, of course, it's mainly first about how they respond, but then secondly, like, you know, what was the root? So if it's a 0-day in your software that, you know, whatever, it was a lot of work, right, to decompile and find the vuln, then that's kind of like, yeah, that's a hard fought. A lot of effort went into getting into that breach. Then when you see like it's a S3 bucket that had I'm not saying this is, but it's an S3 bucket that had an API key that had, you know, whatever, then it's just like, oh, come on, guys. Like, so it's kind of just a internal weighting system that I use, but it's kind of a bummer. But they clearly have some big customers, so yeah, this will be curious to see kind of what, because it certainly can't be done yet. There's going to be something else from this.
So in our pre-show, I tossed out a pretty bombastic thing that I don't think you had violent reactions to, but you all definitely had reactions to it. And I think I'm tired of large software providers and large service providers. I think I'm really just tired of them. They now seem to be like the way to break a lot of things really easily. And I guess my question then to you all is, or maybe I'll assert first, we should be encouraging organizations to use smaller providers or build their things in-house versus rely on these giant providers out there, because all they're doing is making it easier to do large wide-scale breaches, and now getting into the government. And I appreciate Hemingway going yet, because like it's great that CISA was like, there's been a couple of things lately where like a lot of companies, we're going to talk about the telcos in a second, where we have completely eradicated, there's no trace of this at all, and like we think, as far as we know, like where's all the conditioning like traces on there? I know PR doesn't do that, but they really shouldn't do that. So back to my question, is it time to stop with the behemoths and get back to doing things small or in-house? Anyone that wants to go first?
I argue it doesn't matter. So you have on one, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. On one hand, you have a very large org that can have a very large impact. Theoretically, they have a lot more resources to invest in shoring up security, and kind of fortifying their products a bit more. So large impact if you get in, but harder to get in. On the other hand, for smaller, like startup type software, or the smaller products that you're kind of talking about, I feel they have less resources to invest in security. But then if you get in, you have a smaller impact. So I think the net result is it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
maybe, but like, I want to say that, like, if you're using the smaller company, you might get breached by something silly, and if you're using the larger company, you get breached by something more nation state. But again, does it matter once you're breached? Like, it still sucks. So use what does what you need it to do.
Yeah, I feel like this is designed specifically to like be a spicy take kind of question, because we're all sort of like, I don't know about that. Yeah, I think it's a matter of you're offloading risk one way or another. Like, do you want to get caught up in a Move It or a BeyondTrust, or do you want to have some boutique small firm like get popped through something really silly that could equally silly could happen to this large company, as we've seen time and time again. I won't even name the edge devices and all the providers, but like we've seen this over and over. I don't think it matters. And I think trying to encourage orgs necessarily to move away from, buy versus build, like startups don't have the resources to build. Like, they're building the thing. They don't have the resources necessarily to build all these other pieces of tooling.
And how many times do we learn of a product when it gets breached?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I didn't know about Move It until now. We all are
Yeah,
very
now
intimate
everybody
with
does. Now
Move
it's
It.
a
Yeah.
joke. But like, yeah, I think it's just a matter of offloading that risk. And I think ultimately it's sort of like, what is your threat model as a corporation, right? Like, if you're the treasury, like maybe you want, the larger organization that has more resources to enact an incident response. But like, I think we've seen like BeyondTrust did a good job. Like, from what we've seen, I think they've done a reasonable job. But like, at the same time, does that mean that like a smaller company wouldn't allow you to like get through with more obscurity? But like, if someone wants to own you, they will own you. Like, I think it's like, are you just going to get caught up in being low hanging fruit, or are you, I don't know. Like, I don't think this is a meaningful difference in security posture personally.
And I don't think that this is saying also that people should roll their own or build their own, because that's usually the worst option.
Please don't. Please do not.
Don't implement your own encryption algorithm.
So maybe one pushback against it doesn't matter if it's a big company or small company, it's like they're going to get hacked. If like this was a nation state attack, like this was like a well-resourced group using BeyondTrust to get in to do things in other organizations, do you think they're going to divide their resources to be able to deal with a bunch of tiny small companies, or are they going to have to put all the resources into just doing one? Or is your assertion that, well, they'll get to it eventually, so it doesn't matter?
I don't know if I understand the question, actually.
Well, so like the attackers aren't voluminous. Like, they're out there. There's a lot of them. There aren't a ton of really well-resourced nation-state attacker groups. There's a bunch, but there's not like millions of them. And when they do things, they tend to focus their efforts, and they tend to be treated really good. So they're going to focus on BeyondTrust. They're not going to focus on BeyondTrust and Joe's authenticationservice.com. And like, are you saying that they'll eventually get to Joe's authenticationservice.com, or are you saying that it doesn't matter?
If a target they care about uses Joe's authentication service, absolutely it's in the crosshairs. Like, I think it's irrespective of the size of the vendor. Like, I don't think that matters to something that you're like, who is well resourced. Like, we're talking about like in the world of like nation state, heavily resourced. But to your point, I don't necessarily think that is the majority of threat actors out there. We're talking like large cybercrime actors. We're talking about that kind of stuff. Like, that's maybe a different story. That's when maybe the larger organizations might present a different type of risk, because it's like, I don't know, like Clock, you get more bang for your buck if you go after and Move It, because so many big organizations use Move It. Like, but with APTs, like, I feel like that's a different conversation almost. Like I
Yeah, I guess like maybe one way to think about it is if you want if you're an org and you need some kind of remote access service and you're like, I need, I want to do the best I can, so I want to use the same service that's been approved by the federal government or something, because you're putting out some kind of an extension of trust that's been vetted in some way. Okay, fine. So you probably have accomplished what you set out to do. But then when you talk about like collateral damage or, if what Emily's saying is like, if the federal government's using XYZ product, then attackers are going to look at XYZ product. So if you're using it, then you're like more likely to get caught up in a nation state collateral damage. So like if that's in your threat model, then that is something to consider. But if a nation state compromises that product and you're a dentist office, like you've been affected by it, but are they like looking, into your stuff? Like you just happen to be in the room where the decision was made or whatever the line is from Hamilton. Like, I don't know. It's your risk profile, your threat profile, threat model. Sorry.
Image has been quiet on this whole thing.
I don't know. I feel like I agree that it doesn't matter because when we think about some of the most worrying supply chain attacks of the past few years too, they've always been these really tiny libraries that have like 2 open source developers that are working on it and like maybe are used by like a BeyondTrust, right? So I think it's not like it shouldn't be a versus conversation. It's more of like a, not to be cheesy, but like let's all think about how we can all help make our responses better to these situations, because again, it's not like it's going to happen to everybody. I'm wondering though, just like tossing the question of do we think that like larger vendors respond better than smaller vendors because they have more resources?
But they don't always. I don't think it's a rule.
Right. Like, yeah, not to name names, but yeah, like they definitely have the capability of doing it, but we haven't necessarily seen any more accountability from larger vendors. And maybe that's what Bob is getting at, is that like sometimes maybe you should have more accountability at a certain size.
This is kind of breaking my brain.
Oh no.
Oh,
why?
sorry, Emily. Oh,
no, go ahead. But let your brain.
This is kind of breaking my brain because it's like if you take the security resourcing out of the picture, like it is awesome to go to find a small company that has a focused product, and they only have one thing and they make one thing really awesome, and you use it and you have a great experience, like, whatever, because they're not having to manage, 1,500 integrations with this product, whatever. It just works, whatever. So that's such a great experience. But then when you add in like the security side of that, like, do they have that resources to protect themselves with the data? Then that's where it all kind of falls apart. So it's kind of breaking my brain as like far as Bob's original question of like big or small. Like, I don't think there's a right or a universal answer to that, because it's going to be so variable. Because like, love small companies and startups and how focused they are, but this is just an area where there's so many unknowns that it takes a lot of resources to keep up with security.
I mean, mission accomplished. I broke Glenn. That was good. That's great. I think what I'll add to that though, in terms like to completely negate my assertion, to riff off of what Glenn just said, when there is a small company that decides I want to just be the best company at this thing, and they do a really good job and they make this really cool thing, and like it becomes something that a decent number of orgs use, maybe not every org, because that's what we're trying to dissuade. Like some idiot like Oracle buys them and ruins it, right? Like it's almost inevitable that that's going to happen. So I guess you have to be prepared that you're going to have this exposure at some point if a company really is doing that good of a job, because I don't know of any one of them that stays small. And even if they do, they tend to be the one that acquires other ones and become horrible at some point too.
Broadcom.
Oof, yeah. Wow. Yeah. You know what? Actually, this is an aside. Get off of VMware, everybody. Like yesterday, Proxmox, throw it away. Proxmox, please don't. Well, we should talk about that at some point. I do want to point out to everybody, and I think this was covered in regular media too, but I want to get down here. this is a conspiracy theory, just posit more than
Can
anything
you
else. But
enhance?
oh yeah, enhance, boom, boom, boom. It has that better. Better? Is that better?
Yes.
I need thank you. I need audio because I can't see you when I do that. There we go. Back in March, OFAC had announced sanctions against APT 31. So was this just a really long tail thing that they happen to get hacked by Chinese nation state actors again, not again, but got hacked by them, or is it just, hey, we had the opportunity, we did it? Like, this is pure conspiracy theory. This is why it would be great if Kimber was here. But is it opportunistic, or is it really retaliation, and it was just a long tail for retaliation?
You're talking about like going after OFAC
OFAC,
being hacked?
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I think it's long tail retaliation. I think looking at the geopolitical kind of situation is maybe a good thing to do here. I mean, think about what's going to happen in a few days here in the US, right? We're having an administration change. It's probably not a terrible thing to know, like, what's going on at OFAC. Like, what are we thinking? What's waiting in the wings for someone who's, you know, potentially going to be you know, see implications of this. So I don't know if I necessarily think it's linked or tied, but like I could certainly see why it would be valuable information to have or want if I were one of these particular nation states.
And I'm gonna pepper on some conspiracy. We also, while we learned about BeyondTrust in December, you know, I don't know that there's been a hard, like, have we seen like this started on this date? Like, we have, you know, I assume they're still doing the investigation, right? So like, what if this, you know, goes back further than we had known?
That would be terrible, and there's always possibility. The other thing that I'm going to remove this from a conspiracy theory and just posit it as well. I mean, these are folks with day jobs. Like these nation state attacker groups. Like, these are humans with day jobs. They get money for doing the work that they do for the entity. And you know, maybe on their goals and objectives sheet, like if you can nail OFAC by the end of the year, you get like a 30% bonus. Like Glenn does a lot of really great work between December 1st and 7th to be able to, you know, get a good bonus at the end of the year. Just so I'm wondering if that's the same thing for these guys. Like, is they just icing on the cake to get like a nice little end of year bonus for what they do? I don't know.
It's like pardoning people before you leave the White House. Is that what you're saying?
Oof. All right, we are moving on because we have touched on politics way too much right now.
It's getting really impossible not to with the nation state stuff, but yeah.
We will do our best to not, Glenn. How about that? The other one, and this is I think I forced this as a thing to talk about today, just because I have been going off on Blue Sky every time I see one of these things. So for folks that aren't aware, Salt Typhoon has been doing a lot of really bad things over the course of like the past year-ish. They're weaseling their way into all sorts of things, and it turns out that they managed to get into our nation's, you know, public telecommunications infrastructure. And I think that it's 9 total now. I'm not sure. I think I think this the reference link I got here, but we have a ton of links we can shout out to everybody. I think it's total of 9 companies. I'm not sure the 9th one's been told yet, but I saw like cyber press talking like TechCrunch and other cybersecurity ones out there. They were stories. Oh, Verizon says we've cleaned up Salt Typhoon, and AT&T, we got rid of them all. They're not in our network anymore. But all these people with their assertions that this extraordinarily capable, insidious group that has managed to like weasel their way in and stay in a ton of organizations. We got it. We totally got it. We totally, and like back to what Hema just said like 30 minutes ago. Yet is like, where's the word, or as far as we know. So I didn't ask you guys yet, but like, how do these folks know? Like, how are they making these yes, we totally did this. How are they doing that?
They don't know. This isn't their research team talking. This isn't their IR team talking. This is like legal. This is like what they have to publicly say to restore faith in the institution that is telecom.
Aren't they just using the IOCs that have been shared globally to
Oh, that's such a good joke.
identify
That's such a good joke, Glenn. What
Salt
IOCs?
Typhoon?
What
Yeah.
things shared? Because
Yeah,
we,
they looked at their
like,
logs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean,
go ahead, Glenn. Good.
yeah. So I clearly am saying that facetiously because, like, I, along with, well, we, along with every other responsible organization in the world, the last, several months have been clamoring for good hashes, IOCs, indicators, like whatever, to look for or contribute towards the like larger investigation into this. And the answers are basically from most of like the threat or the intel sharing groups that, at least in my circle, like the answers are basically, yeah, and if you find something reliable, then also share it with us, because everyone's just kind of like walking around looking and picking up rocks, but there's not like there is stuff being shared, but none of it that I've come across has been like tangible, reliable, like, yes,
there's no
like this is what to look for.
confirmation. There's the whole
Yeah, like that.
share with us if you find something, but we're not going to tell. Which again, I get. There's like an active investigation. I understand that, but in some of these more like, not TLP clear forums and things, like I think there's room to say like we assess with high confidence this is related to this cluster of activity. Like give some feedback. Like how are hunters supposed to know? Because we're all kind of working with fragmented information, and it gets into the same thing where like different research groups will have different names for what we think are the same actor, but it's like, well, we don't have the same vantage point, so we can't call this emotet or whatever. Like we are going to call it this other thing, but we think they're similar, and it's like that's how we end up with this proliferation of names. So I kind of feel like a similar thing is happening here, where there's fragmented pieces of information being shared with different organizations, and like it makes it really hard to tell a cohesive story. Like this is it's such a confusing story, I think, for a lot of reasons, not least of which is the fact that there are like multiple typhoons and they all seem related but not related. But it's just I think it's just kind of a mess.
Yeah, and so kind of the gutting like punch of that is, okay, so defenders are struggling to get a confident, not verified because they'll never, but like a data set of IOCs that is of high confidence is a way to identify and eradicate these things. So we can't really get those. But then the flip side of that is we have companies that were the most affected by this, of course, telcos, because that was the target, are saying we got rid of them. Okay, please share what you use to measure, to find, identify, eradicate, whatever, because there's a lot more to this than going straight to telco. And so this is going to have a very long tail. So like either everyone's full of crap and saying like, I saw no traffic to China, so we've eradicated them, or there is a good list of IOCs out there floating around that's being kept, understandably, like TLP, magma. But if we want to move us forward like globally, then we need to share that out. And so it's just kind of a frustrating situation for the defenders.
The last thing before we move on to our own org's cool stuff that we've been doing of late. This one so CISA did do, as usual, good jobs like talking to all of these firms and providing guidance to all these firms, and there's public guidance, and then there's what they actually tell them with like the IOCs you all were talking about. This stood out to me though in the summary of what CISA was talking to them for, and I'll just read it. This is in mobile ID world, but following confirmed breaches at major US telecom providers, CISA issued specific recommendations for highly targeted individuals, particularly senior management and political officials. The guidance emerges as telecommunications security faces increasing scrutiny, with US carriers working to implement more secure authentication messages like the ZenKey platform. Those are well chosen words. Does this mean that like the official, like government officials, senior executives in these organizations and related to these, like they were just using like username and password to get into sensitive things? Or Like the fact that they said you probably should use good authentication means they weren't using good authentication. I think like it's 2025, and how is that still a thing?
Well, I mean, so not long after all of this, like CISA and the FBI came out and were like, hey, stop using unencrypted. It was like their mobile communications guidance, right? One of the things in there was like, stop using unencrypted communications mediums. So, like, use Signal, use WhatsApp, don't use WhatsApp. But then, just like moving away from SMS as a form of MFA, right? Like, that's another thing, I think. So, I mean, we're still talking about it. Lots of organizations still offer it as an option. So I think moving away from that's probably prudent. So yeah, I would imagine there's a reason we're talking about that.
Yeah, I just can't live in a world where we're gonna dog on people for using SMS as two-factor. At least having it as an option. Like, it's still better than nothing. So like I'm never gonna take that stance. But now, of course, like if you are a nation state target, then yes, then clearly you should not use SMS as a, like there's degrees here that like everything. We work in the worst industry, actually. Like everything depends all the time. The answer is it depends. But
So what's really funny is, like, I think 5 years ago, I would have agreed with you. I would have been like, yeah, I will never, ever, blanket statement, will never put anyone down for using SMS MFA over nothing. I still feel that way largely for most people most of the time. But I do think there are and I think you kind of touch on this, right? Like, there are situations where it's absolutely completely inappropriate. If you are an executive, if you are a researcher, if you are someone in a position with access to highly sensitive things, absolutely you should not be using SMS MFA. You should be using something else. And like, that is the hill I'll die on.
yeah, it's back to threat model. Like family, grandma, whatever. Yeah, do your thing. But enterprise organization, PII protection, whatever. Then yeah, like let's. And the telco breaches kind of highlight, right, some of that risk where the infrastructure that was put in place to be able to monitor things was then used to monitor things by a nation state, an aggressive or whatever, a hostile nation state, whatever. So that's why suddenly the pendulum has gone from like, we need to have backdoors and get rid of encryption to, oh God, please only use encrypted chats. And now, fast forward about 2.5 months and we're going to be back to like, okay, use encryption, but we need a backdoor. So, here round
Also,
and round
don't
we
use
go.
VPNs while you're at it.
Yeah, which
is a whole other.
Yeah.
That's being said very tongue in cheek, by the way. Please continue to use VPNs if you're
the one topic I do want to cover at some point this year is the 2FA Hall of Shame, which is all the companies that charge significant uplift to use MFA. We are gonna have to do that at some point down, because that's probably a reason why a lot of folks aren't using it right now. All right, so I would like to talk to our Censys colleagues. I know that you don't like us going to the rapid response page for some reason all the time, but are there, besides the actively exploited vulnerability and BeyondTrust?
Look at all that work.
I know. Look at guys. Look at this. I just want to go back because like we haven't.
Jackson is on fire. Like,
is this all Jackson?
A lot of it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson.
Jackson,
that's a joke for two of you.
I don't know. Well, okay, but Jackson, like I don't crush people in my org. Well, Glenn, but everybody else is fine. Like, you should come over here if they're like working you to death like this. This is terrible. Look at all this stuff making. Is there anything else you wanted to cover on your rapid response page? Anything I should click on, or did you just want to let people know about your rapid response page since I brought it up and I'm forcing the issue this time?
Go check it out. Read it. Read things.
RSS feed it.
It's so rapid. Yeah, no, in all seriousness, I'm really, really proud of how like this program has matured over the past year and how much more insight we're able to add. And we're continuing to iterate on them, continuing to figure out what, graphs and interesting tidbits of data people are most interested in, and figuring out how we can like use these also as a way to help everybody learn how to use Censys to answer your own questions about these vulnerabilities, right? Like each of these is a little tiny piece of almost like training data. Yeah.
And as a teaser for everybody, like we are going to get Mark to come on and talk about Sensei at some point, right? That's going to be a thing. Okay, because there was a blog post recently where you've leveled up Sensei since the initial release of it already too. So I think folks really should know about the resource and be able to go do stuff on there. So that's pretty cool. I will do my best Kimber impersonation, or we will channel our combined inner Kimber to talk about VulnCheck. I don't know how between Patrick and Baines and everybody they crank these things out, but they do. This one is the top 25 CWEs, truly the most dangerous software weaknesses of 2024. Patrick's got a great table. There's good insights into like what the analysis was, why VulnCheck did the analysis. I'm totally not going to ruin the surprise for everybody, so you're gonna have to read it yourselves. It's really accessible. I think it's important to look at different perspectives of this, because a certain like large org says these were the top like CVEs and these were the top weaknesses does not necessarily mean that that's actually accurate from an empirical standpoint. From what orgs see on the ground, and both VulnCheck and actually Censys, VulnCheck, and we all see things from different vantage points. So I think it's important to get those views. And you can also read the in-depth look at the 4-faith industrial router CVE that VulnCheck managed to find, and they actually use Censys to report on all the ones that were out there. So good on that collaboration bit between everybody out there. And I'm going to stop that screen and I am going to present here. This is something, I guess this is sort of like a combined Censys-y thing, because like I did focus on you all a little bit in this particular one. This was like a sort of like end of the year holiday present for everybody, and like it totally went under the radar. Not a complaint. Like I should have published this like months before. We just been a little busy internally. So if folks remember, about 2 years ago, we did an initial thing about, hey, we have a lot of benign scanners. Let's see how long it takes them to find stuff on the internet. We just happen to have deployed 2 new sensors out in Middle Eastern space, and so it was easy to take a look at that. Well, now we have, with our, just to tout our new sensors and our new honeypot capabilities, I'm able to do that at scale across a whole bunch of the fleet. So I carved out a slice of non-US, non-primary EU, basically in countries that don't often get a lot of love and attention from everybody out there, and said, I wonder how like the top 10 folks that tend to come at us did finding these new ones that popped up in November. So this is kind of a breakdown. We talk about what the experiment was, kind of show you the depth and breadth of each one of the folks out there. Censys is of course one of the best ones out there. And we have a bunch of fun, like this is like my best attempt at holiday lights for the one out there. A lot of overviews about what's going on. So definitely take a look at this if you want to see some of the data. We can dig into some of the data as well. But the one I would like to point out here, just on this particular one, I believe, no, it's the one out here. I just cannot believe the coverage that Censys has, folks. I mean, and I know that you only don't just scan 36,000 ports. Like we just have, this was a very confined measurement space to be able to measure across all these, but you literally beat everybody out there. And like, what's it like knowing you're number one?
I sleep so good at night.
Always looking
And
over my shoulder.
I will double, like, I hope this is assumed by the folks that watch or know, especially Bob, but like this is a true, like, no punches, no finagling of the data to make this look a certain way or not. Like, yeah, we're all friends here, but this is partly why, because Censys does a really excellent job, and so we have a lot of faith and trust in them. But yeah, this is legit. It's cool.
And we have one more blog that we managed to crank out at the end of the year. And this was a fun one. Glenn, were you involved in helping Noah publish this one back on the 10th? Because I don't think I was involved in this one.
That was a long time ago. That was last year, Bob.
Yeah, I know. It's totally last year, Glenn. I get that. Yeah.
I can't remember, honestly. Which one? Scroll up. Which one is this? Oh, this is this is where we, yeah, Mytel, which honestly, oh wait, Mytel was added to Kev today. Which number is that? today was added. Oh, look at that. The first one I mentioned, the 41.713, was added to Kev moments ago.
Wow.
Look at that.
Very cool.
We did it.
Yeah, so I think the big thing about this one, and we're going to be talking a lot more about this kind of behavior in a report later this year. We got 2 interesting reports coming out, probably in like the February and like March, April timeframes. But the second one is going to talk about speed. And this is a case where here, the same day this POC went public, we saw attacker activity, not just like goofy activity, but like actual attacker activity associated with it based upon the POC. So we actually managed to get that. It's really good use of our IP block list as well for something like that. And I'm gonna totally get Ashley to yell at me right now. Ashley, we have a couple things coming up, right? So I think one, I think Censys, we are doing a workshop with you soonish. Is that right?
This sounds right, but TBD on details.
When? Yeah,
Yes.
details. Yeah. So
News to me.
I believe we'll be doing a lot of workshops again with you all this year. If you don't go to them, you should. You learn a lot about Censys and GreyNoise and how to actually do stuff on the internet, like discover things, research things. It's actually a really good informative hands-on session to be able to do that.
You also learn from other folks. The saying is terrible. There's multiple ways to skin a cat, but like with thread hunting, there's multiple ways to do the thing. So at these sessions, you often learn from the other folks in the session as well, which is cool. Like even the instructors or the lead, whatever, the people leading the session learn from the folks that have attended as well, because we'll have different ideas about where to start, where to end, where to pivot. So community is great.
We're going to be our new threat intel guide comes out tomorrow too. That's right. Keep it out for the noise letter. We'll be putting it out tomorrow as well. And I think we're going to be at the SANS CTI Summit. That's going to be in the newsletter too. Does Censys have any upcoming things that you know about that you want to toss out? Because you could do as equally bad of a job at it as I just did if you want to.
If you haven't yet, you should go and check out our beta platform. You can just navigate to platform.censys.io.
Like a fish?
Test it out. Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Wait, you revamped your whole platform?
We are going to, and it's exciting. You should be able to get beta access. Or maybe not.
None of us have no idea. We'll edit this out, right? This isn't live.
No. Our heads are not back, and we are still.
Keep your eyes peeled for exciting things for Censys, GreyNoise, and VulnCheck in the upcoming weeks, because
stuff and things are happening soon.
Yeah, we got lots of stuff. All right. Well, yeah. Given that, like, we're all just getting back into the swing of things. Thank y'all for making the time today to have this chat. Missing Kimber, like, really something fierce, but we'll have her back soon. She's under the weather a little bit more than Glenn is.
I think everybody's sick. I think like 40 or 60% of the country is grimy right now.
Ugh. And a bunch is under snowfall and ice right now too, so that's not great. Well, cool. Well, that's all for today's Stormwatch. Remember, folks, whether it's BeyondTrust or beyond telecoms, the Salt Typhoon has made it clear that Chinese hackers are beyond control. Stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time for more cyber weather updates. Catch y'all next Tuesday. Be safe.